Hours after losing his first parliamentary vote, Friedrich Merz was sworn in as Germany's new chancellor. His mission is to fix the economy, stop a far-right surge, and avoid a trade war with the US.
President Trump saying he wants a straight 50% tariff on the EU beginning June 1st.
In this video, I wanted to take a look at whether he can do it and what happens if he can't. Germany's economy is stalling. Living costs are climbing, and in just a few weeks, 90-day tariff pause ends with the US. So Friedrich Merz has three problems: a hostile White House, a surging far-right, and a collapsing economy. And he's expected to fix all three at once. So can Merz deliver? And what happens to Germany if he can't? Merz has 4 years to stop the AfD from taking over.
Tonight, a major political shift in Germany that could send shockwaves across Europe.
The Conservative Party coming out on top in Germany's snap election, defeating the Social Democrats who came in third. Surging to second place, the alternative far right, the strongest finish for the party since World War II.
Voters are rallying behind its anti-establishment, anti-immigrant messaging, part of a global wave of right-wing populism that we're seeing all around the world. But this isn't just a domestic shift. Trump's cabinet, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and even Elon Musk have voiced support for the AfD. And that endorsement, especially the recent tweets by Marco Rubio, didn't sit right with Friedrich Merz. On trade, Ukraine, and even on basic political values, the US and Germany no longer see eye to eye.
The president threatened a blanket 50% tariff on imports from the European Union, claiming trade discussions are going, quote, nowhere.
Merz is under pressure to repair a deeply fractured relationship. Because if new tariffs hit, Germany's struggling industries, cars, machinery, chemicals, will take another hit. That means more layoffs and fewer chances for Merz to deliver the recovery voters expected when they elected him. Now it's time for him to do so in a divided parliament and with another party, the SPD, that leans left socially and fiscally. Confidence in the US as a reliable trading partner is eroding, for the EU especially.
President Trump's announcement of universal tariffs on the whole world, including the European Union, is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism.
The problem is bigger than American tariffs. Trump's unpredictable behavior, including his attacks on judges and trying to unravel the US Constitution, and his constant going back and forth on tariffs, make the US an incredibly difficult trading partner to deal with. Regardless, Merz is set to meet Trump at the NATO summit in The Hague at the end of June, and the two have already spoken on the phone. BMW, Volkswagen, and Mercedes all build cars in the US and sell hundreds of thousands of vehicles there each year. New tariffs would raise their costs overnight.
This kind of tariffs leads only to a spiral of protectionism. The products will be much more expensive, we will higher inflation rate, and that causes all the consumers in the US.
On May 14th, Merz presented his Regierungserklärung, aka his agenda, for his term as Germany's new chancellor. The media reported that rhetorically it was not a masterpiece and that Merz bragged too much about his state visits that week, meeting with French President Macron, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. While much of the press was not enthusiastic about the address, there are a few key points that Merz touched on that are worth mentioning. Merz pledged to turn the Bundeswehr into the strongest conventional force in Europe and to boost defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2032, more than double Germany's current expenditures. The figure, quietly endorsed at last week's NATO summit in Antalya, Turkey, would plug the vacuum Washington threatens to leave if a second term of Trump scales back US security guarantees, which he obviously already has hinted at. 5% may sound abstract, but it's roughly an extra 80 billion euros a year. Money Berlin hasn't had to find since reunification. Which raises the next question: where is that money going to come from? Germany's constitutional debt brake caps structural borrowing at 0.35% of GDP. Merz wants to rewrite that rule. and finance a 500 billion euro 12-year infrastructure and reindustrialization fund.
In a sense, Germany is belatedly joining the global debt party.
They need more domestic demand, and the private sector runs a huge surplus in Germany, doesn't generate demand adequately, has to spend a lot more on defense, we all know it. Its growth is very slow, it needs a lot more public sector investment. Investment has been very weak. If you need a defense build-up, you need to borrow. That's what governments are for.
It is a high-risk, high-reward play that many debt-addicted nations have gambled on in the past. If it pays off, Germany will have spurred economic growth. If the returns don't materialize, however, Germany's government bonds will look less attractive, which can also spur inflation. And historically, Germany's bonds are very attractive because of the debt brake and because of this fiscal responsibility that Germany did in comparison to other nations which continue to print more money, especially since COVID. In his address, Merz framed irregular migration as a test of state authority and promised tighter border control. It includes a new policy of 24-hour spot checks on the Polish and Czech borders, and his interior minister, Alexander Dobrindt, rolled it out within hours of taking office. Merz coupled the border push with a pledge to speed up deportations as well. Strategically, the tightening of the borders is designed to discredit the AfD's claims that only the far right will secure the borders and stop uncontrolled migration. Let's take a look at the things that Merz can benefit from in the coming years. There's a few macroeconomic factors in play here. Firstly, he benefits from the fact that the previous coalition did such a horrible job. So Merz can already do much better than the previous coalition, and the following factors can help Merz do so. Germany's industry. Germany's industry is historically very resilient. Firstly, because at the core is the medium-sized business sector, or in German, the Mittelstand, a network of medium-sized, often family-owned businesses that specialize in high-precision manufacturing, machinery, automotive parts, and industrial tools. Companies that you've likely never heard of, but that supports the world's manufacturing capability. While the global manufacturing sector has cooled down post-COVID, it's actually meant to heat up again due to another trend that I'm going to be talking about in a second, and this will massively benefit the Mittelstand. Germany's industry also ranks among the most complex in the world.
This means that if there is a crisis in one industry or one particularly large firm, there are many other areas of German industry that may cushion the blow.
And the German manufacturing sector actually stands to gain from the tariff wars and the trend of deglobalization.
Now, with Trump back in the White House, China's position as factory of the world looks increasingly fragile. Therefore, other countries like Vietnam, Hungary, and India have an opportunity to become the next factory of the world. But to do so, they will need the latest German machines.
And as a lot of German companies or leaders are building the machinery used to produce goods globally. Companies like Trumpf, Zeiss, Siemens, Infineon Technologies, and Rheinmetall are just a few examples. So Merz has the task to position Germany's manufacturing and industrial sector to benefit from this growth, to cut red tape, to enable Germany's economic growth in the coming years, because that means more jobs and more economic opportunity for more people. People that might have voted for AfD will then turn to CDU because they've noticed that Germany is doing much better and their wallets are doing much better than maybe 4 years ago, come 2029. He also has to tighten the borders to disempower AfD's narrative that the AfD is the only party that can control the migration. Yeah, and he has the task of strengthening the NATO alliance, especially as Trump and his administration are backing out and increasingly siding with Russia. So the stakes are huge for Germany, but also the EU at large, because Germany is the bedrock of a strong EU alliance. What are your thoughts? Is Merz and his coalition up to the task? Comment down below what you think. And if you enjoyed this clip, then make sure to subscribe.